You're listening to the Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast. Today's episode is titled The Toxic Family That Can't Let Go. Are you a Catholic wife grappling with challenging in-laws? The Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast is your sanctuary for navigating the sometimes stormy seas of life with toxic in-laws while being validated for what you've experienced. Join me, your host, Miriam Susan, a Catholic wife who's weathered 3 decades of in-law drama, as we tackle the tough issues you're dealing with head on. Welcome to today's episode. This is part 3 in a series that I've been doing about when family, toxic families specifically, become an idol. And we are doing this in April of 2026. And this is this topic of when spiritual enmeshment happens, when you just have these parents that just can't seem to let their adult children grow up and be adult children. And that is what I'm going to be talking about today. It is a disordered attachment to this theology of the importance of family. And family is important. I'm not discounting that at all. But family looks different after you get married. So our reference today is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and it is from paragraph 2214, and it says, "The divine fatherhood is the source of human fatherhood. This is the foundation of honor owed to parents. The respect of children, whether minors or adults, for their father and mother is nourished by the natural affection born of the bond uniting them. It is required by God's commandment." Now, just like last week's episode, this can feel a little bit triggering. It can feel like a bit of a sting to it because of how toxic people love to use scripture. They love to use the church's teachings against us in a way to try to manipulate and control us. And I'm not going to say, just like I didn't last week, that family is not important, that we shouldn't have a level of honor and respect towards our parents, because we should. What we need to get clarity on is the difference between what the church teaches and what toxic people are saying that these scriptures mean, because it's often very, very different. Now, this catechism reference is in a whole group of paragraphs from the catechism, and I'm looking at them on my desk here, all about the duties of family members. That's the heading, and then this chapter, or this paragraph 2214 is from one under the title of the duties of children. And it talks a lot about our duties as children when we are living at home, when we are still children and not adult children. And the bottom line is that our parents are owed, no matter how evil, no matter how toxic, no matter how much they drive us crazy, they are owed a certain level of honor or respect because they are our parents. Now, I've referenced this video a lot of times, but Father Mike Schmitz has a really, really good episode about loving difficult parents. I think that's the title. And he talks about there's 3 levels of respect. If you are not familiar with that one, the first one is just respect to other human beings because they are human beings, because we are all created in God's image. The second level of respect or honor is for somebody in a certain position of authority. So our parents are in a position of authority given by God. No matter how much they failed in their role, we still owe them a certain level of honor and respect just because they gave us life, just because they brought us into the world, just because they kept us alive for our childhoods. And that can extend to priests. It can extend to figures of authority in government. That's another kind of respect that, the Pope, whether you agree with him or not, he deserves a certain level of respect because of his position, because of his authority. Now, the third kind of respect and honor is one that is not owed, but is earned. And that is one that a lot of times, if you have a very difficult relationship with your parents, maybe your parents were truly neglectful, maybe they were truly very harsh and abusive, that is a kind of respect that they have not earned, and so they don't receive that kind of respect. And that kind of respect is the more like, I want to spend time with you. level of respect. I want to be around you. I want my kids to be around you. That's that level of respect. And that is not owed, but that is earned. And so we have to understand the differences of this word. There are nuances within this word, within these chapters, within these paragraphs of the Catechism, and within Scripture that we have to acknowledge. We have to understand that our simple vocabulary might not fully encompass the meaning with which the Scriptures and the Catechism are intended to teach us. So, what does it look like when there is a toxic family that just can't seem to let go? Well, there's this version of love, and I kind of put that in quotes because love should always be seeking the good of the other person. And toxic people don't seem to understand that definition of love. Oftentimes, with toxic people, their definition of love is, what can I use you for? What can I get from you? What can you give back to me? What kind of need can you fulfill in my life that perhaps God should fill? And that's what that kind of love, their definition of love, looks like. Where my definition of love, I try to imitate the love of God the Father, which is an unconditional love. Like, it doesn't matter what my kids do, I will love them. I might not always like them. I might not always be happy with their choices. But at the end of the day, I love my kids. And I would do anything for them to whatever is good for them. Okay. So a toxic dynamic, this version of love that is holding on too tight, can look like devotion just on the surface, where your husband's always calling his parents, where he's always very involved in everything that they're doing in their lives and decisions that they're making, whatever. And he's always there for them, always. But underneath that, something is off. And I understand this very, very well because this is what I saw in my husband before we got married. You hear these things when you're getting married and, look for a man, or when you're dating, look for a man who treats his mother really well. That was my husband. He was always very kind, very just honoring towards his mom. But underneath it, something was off. And this is where parents seem to need their adult son more for certain things than he needs them. And it might be also a family that has never really let their child grow up and go off and become an independent person. It's always like he's got to have like his arm, like his mom and dad are holding his arm back here and he's trying to move forward, but they're pulling him back. That's kind of what it felt like a lot with my husband, is that he wanted to be married to me. He wanted to start our own family, but it was like there was always this echo that he was listening out for, his parents like calling him home. And not necessarily physically calling him home, but like calling his attention back to his family of origin. And chances are you see it, but he might not, because this is just life. This is just how it's always been. This is how he anticipates it always being. And that gap between what you see and what your husband does not see can be perhaps one of the most exhausting spaces to live, because you're aware that your husband is not able to just be his own man, that he always has to get approval from mom and dad. And you know that he can be this independent, strong man. You know it. But somehow, some way, when his mom and dad get involved, he becomes this little boy again that has to seek their approval. Now, some families will operate as though everyone exists to be the support for the emotional needs of the parents. And that's just the family culture. That's just how it is. And adult children, or all the adults in a family, depending on how the culture is structured for your husband's family, they're just supposed to be available, compliant, and loyal. Not because they want to be, but because that's what love looks like in that family. To be loyal to the family till the very end. Like, too bad, so sad. If you have another family, your family as the wife is like, who are they? Like, how can you want to spend time with your family when you should be spending time with your husband's family? You know, that kind of thing. Like a jealousy. There was always this undercurrent of jealousy within my in-laws. They always seemed to be very jealous of the time that I spent and we spent as a family with my parents. And now if we called it out, we would get a very proper response of, oh no, we're so glad that you love spending time with your family. Oh, it's important for you to see your family. But that was just all a facade, because if it came down to us having to choose between my family and my husband's, to them, the obvious choice was my husband's family. Like that was it. Even issues that came up within my family when my father passed away, it was all about, let my in-laws take our children so that I could deal with issues with my father's passing. Well, no. It was framed as being helpful, but it felt like a way to take advantage of this difficult situation so that my in-laws could get time alone with our children that we did not want. So when you step outside of that system, when you step outside of this enmeshment, it feels like a betrayal to everyone that's involved. To the toxic in-laws, they're going to feel betrayed because you are choosing something different than what they want you to choose. And for your husband, he's going to feel like he is betraying his family, especially his parents, but his family, his whole family of origin, if they try to navigate things like my in-laws do. He will feel like he is betraying and turning his back on the entire extended family, because that's the way the structure is set up. If you don't comply with the toxic person, then everybody else is going to be cut off. And that, my friends, is not healthy. That's not what a healthy family looks like. And that is a family structure, family culture that has confused love with control. Okay? So Catholic teaching says that parents have a responsibility to raise their children toward their own vocation, toward the life that God is calling them to. For most of us, well, if you're listening to this, then this is the case. But for most men, for many men, that includes marriage and building a new family, right? That's what your husband should have, been pointed towards. His parents should have been raising him towards the vocation of marriage or the priesthood. Your husband chose marriage. But when his parents, or when toxic parents resist that, when they hold on instead of releasing, they're working against what God designed the parent-child relationship to do. When your in-laws refuse to let your husband and you and your immediate family be an autonomous, separate unit, your in-laws, toxic parents, whoever they are working against God's design. Period. It's just like a parent who does not allow their son to enter the priesthood for whatever reason. If that young man is called to the priesthood and the parents are not allowing it, they are working against the way God designed that relationship to be. Because parents are supposed to raise their kids to make their own decisions, to be independent, to make those choices for their vocation on their own. Yes, they can seek advice. Yes, they can seek counsel from parents, but ultimately that decision is their own. And when you have parents who are actively working against that, that goes against God's design. And that's not just like dysfunction, but it's almost like a spiritual disorder, because they want to be in the place of God. When they are saying, no, you have to be loyal to us over your wife, they are putting themselves in the place of God. And it has a cost. And guess who's been paying it? You have. I mean, your husband is too in a way, but it's different because this is what he's used to. This is how mom is. This is how dad is. This is just how our family is. But for you, the cost is very different because you likely entered into your marriage not understanding fully how enmeshed the web was that you have walked into. And now you're in it. And you're trying your best to uphold your marriage vows. But you're working with someone who is struggling to uphold his because of this tie to his family of origin. And we bear the brunt of it, unfortunately. Our husbands get hit in a different way. And it's often a lot harder once they realize what is going on, because then it's their whole paradigm has shattered when they realize just how messed up this relationship is, where the parents are trying to assume that role in their lives. It's really only designed for God to fill. Now, I want to be clear. You did not create this dynamic. You walked into it, and it is a dynamic that has been in place long before you arrived, unless by some strange reason you and your husband met as infants. But chances are the dynamic was already in place before he was even born. And you probably have spent some time blaming yourself. Like you feel like, if I had not come in, if I had not been the one that married my husband, that things wouldn't be like this. Possibly. That's possibly the case. But perhaps let's flip that and say, perhaps you were brought into your husband's life for this very reason. That you were the one that was going to break this family culture to bring your husband out of it. To then bring another generation into the world that doesn't have these dysfunctional attachments, does not have this disordered relationship between parent and adult child. And this really has nothing to do with you personally. It was very eye-opening to step back and realize that it wasn't about me. It wasn't about Miriam Susan. It was not about me, like this person in this body. Because any other woman could have stepped into this, into a marriage with my husband and dealt with very similar things. If she had a similar personality style that I do, that was going to see the dysfunction and call it out and not just be complacent and just kind of toe the line and go along with whatever his mom and dad wanted. So this is what we're dealing with. It is not about you. Please, if there's nothing else that you walk away from this episode with, I want you to know that that it is not about you. It's not. And his parents can make you try to feel that way. His grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, siblings, whatever can try to make you feel like it's you, but it's not about you. It's not. You trying to be your own person, you trying to be your own self is not what caused all of this. You wanting to have an independent family that is the way God designed is not the cause of all of this. This is something that was there before you stepped into the picture. And now you and your husband have an opportunity. We have to see it as an opportunity to break this cycle, to change things for future generations. And also it does our in-laws no good to indulge them in their sinful desires, like we talked about last week. It is better for them to maybe experience a little bit of heartbreak, a little bit of sorrow, a little bit of pain in this life than to continue doing toxic and damaging things to our marriages and to our children than it would be to suffer for all eternity. Now, if this is resonating with you, if this has felt very familiar for you, I want to invite you to join the community at Catholic Wives Plus Toxic In-Laws at the website toxicinlaws.com. This is where I have a free community, a small but growing community of other Catholic women who they understand this enmeshment. They understand this struggle, this competition that it feels like we're in with our in-laws that should not be there. And you can join for free at toxicinlaws.com. There is a paid upgrade, and for one low monthly fee, you can get access to different trainings that I have done on legal protection, on handling holidays, on self-care, on a bunch of different topics. We have a new one every month, and that's all available to you at toxicinlaws.com. God bless you. Go in peace. Disclaimer. All content and information on this podcast and our website, including our programs, products, and/or services, is for information and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical, psychiatric, or mental health advice of any kind, and does not establish any kind of professional client relationship by your listening to this podcast or use of my website. A professional client relationship with you is only formed after we have expressly entered into a written agreement with you that you have signed, including our fee structure and other terms to work with you in a specific matter. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the area for your particular needs and circumstances prior to making any professional, medical, or mental health related decisions.